Riot is one of the biggest names in GD history, ever since his amazing run in May 2015, which peaked with him verifying the most famous Geometry Dash achievement ever. His influence, circle and legacy has reached every corner of the community. Not only did he verify Bloodbath, which gained notice from the wider gaming community, but also was the driving force behind several extreme demons and many huge achievements that are influencing the course of GD history even now. So, one of the most posed questions for this series by fans is, what if Riot never started playing GD? He began his career as a mobile player before moving on to Steam. So what happens if he never downloaded the game? What if his path never crossed this one of the communities? Well, the entire landscape of this game would be very different, and this is what we're going to be looking at today. What if Riot never played GD? Today's structure is going to see us look at Riot's biggest achievements, then remove them, then we will analyse what players could have plugged the gap, before finally analysing what the game and community would be like now in the present day without him. The first thing we need to do is look at Riot's three biggest achievements and what the lack of each of them creates. Let's start with Deadly Clubstep. Deadly Clubstep was originally an insane extreme demon level by the Korean creator Neptune. Deadly Clubstep was similar to the Bloodbath of its time, in that it was a level that acted as a bridge between the old difficult levels such as To the Stars by Aeon Air and the period in GD from 1.8 when difficulty started to get crazy and the first extreme demons started emerging. Deadly Clubstep was head and shoulders above anything besides the three big impossible levels being Ice Carbon Diablo X, Silent Club and the original Stereo Demon S. So when Riot became the second player to beat this new insane demon, it attracted a massive amount of attention, 500,000 views worth to be precise. Since Wreckage has no video, Riot's replay is the oldest surviving legitimate replay of Deadly Clubstep. Someone Riot was racing with to beat Deadly Clubstep was Aeon Air, who had a 2-attempt practice run at the time. If Riot had never existed, perhaps Aeon Air would have actually finished the level and he would be the one with the 500,000 viewed video. With this logic, it stands to reason that Aeon may have had some decent channel growth and may have peaked above 4,000 subscribers when he began to distance himself from the community at the start of 2.0. And maybe now, on his return, he'd have more like 15,000 or so. The next big Riot achievement we're going to talk about is Ice Carbon Diablo X. 6 months after beating Deadly Clubstep, Riot became the first player to legitimately complete Ice Carbon Diablo X by Phobos. As I mentioned earlier, before, Ice Carbon Diablo X was considered on par with Silent Club, but it was Riot who brought it to the plane of viability. Not only this, but it was within his replay of Ice Carbon Diablo X that Riot introduced straight flying to the community, which became a key in-game skill that wrote the future of GD, with demons such as Bloodbath and beyond becoming the norm. Something else that is incredibly important here and will be referenced throughout the rest of the episode is that Ice Carbon Diablo X is much harder on 60Hz. The positioning of Ice Carbon Diablo X now sees it moved below the ultimate phase on the list, and that is because the list is written by 144Hz players' opinions. Ice Carbon Diablo X is much harder on 60Hz, and if Riot was to never exist, the level would remain unbeaten until Cyclic allegedly beat it, and in the meantime, there would be just short of 8 Cataclysm victors. It is likely, in my opinion, that if Riot never existed to drive the 144Hz revolution, the Ice Carbon Diablo X would have been moved above Cataclysm on the list. This is old Cataclysm we are talking about too. You may not remember now, but back in 1.9 many people thought Ice Carbon Diablo X was harder than Cataclysm, and they were likely correct, given it was Riot that settled the difficulty debate while on 144Hz. So for the rest of this episode, I'm going to imply that Ice Carbon Diablo X on 60Hz is harder than old Cataclysm on 60Hz, and for the rest of this episode we will be talking as if Ice Carbon Diablo X is the #1 demon. The third and most important achievement to talk about is Cataclysm itself. Riot was the 4th player to beat old Cataclysm, and his video was the most famous of them all, gaining over 1 million views. Once again from the wider gaming community looking into Geometry Dash as well as our own community. If Riot had never beaten Cataclysm, not only would hard demons in Geometry Dash be nowhere near as recognised and popular for their difficulty, but also Riot would not have been around to verify the Cataclysm update, meaning there would now most likely still be no Cataclysm 2.0 with coins. With Riot's beating of Cataclysm removed, it is likely that old Cataclysm would have gone underneath Icecarb and Diablo X on the list. But of course, we need to look at the much wider ramifications of Riot's Cataclysm victory in the form of him being the driving force behind Bloodbath. As I theorised in GD Theories episode 4, Geostorm may have made a demon to rival the number 1 demon of 1.9, which in both episodes is Icecarb and Diablo X in this case, but it would not have taken the form Bloodbath did, and so we can write Bloodbath off along with Riot. There are references to this in both GD Theories episode 1 and 4, but if Bloodbath never existed along with Riot, a huge amount would change. Bloodbath changed demons. It wasn't just the hardest demon, but it brought the whole idea of straight fighting to the community, which is only really just being phased out now in favour of wave skill with demons like Kenos. Without Bloodbath, 144Hz straight flying would never have been popularised, and so several levels would be cut off too. Aftermath would cease to exist. While it based heavily off Cataclysm, it was a final chapter addition to the trilogy we now know as the Absol trilogy. Without Bloodbath to bridge the gap between Cataclysm and Aftermath, Aftermath would obviously not exist. Obviously, without Bloodbath, its buffed extension sequel level Bloodlust, which is about to become the legendary demon of 2.1, would not have been able to exist either. With no Bloodbath to lay the framework for Hell-themed Geostorm mega collabs, it stands to reason that Yatagarasu would also not have been planned and would not exist. Another demon I do not believe would exist without Bloodbath is a Thanatos. While a Thanatos is nothing really to do with Bloodbath when Exenity started planning it, it was Aurorus who verified it and got it rated. Without Riot, I don't think Aurorus would have even been a known player. He has his own career, but it was Riot's fame that got him any sort of platform for this sort of thing. Also, something I'll cover later is the implications of Riot's disappearance and what that would have on 144Hz's induction to GD. And I think without Riot, Aurorus would not have had a 144Hz monitor for GD, and so wouldn't have had any sort of skill to get noticed by Exenity. If Thanatos had been released, Exenity would have had to have verified it himself, meaning it would probably be quite a lot less difficult than it is in its current form. Or Exenity would have had to hack the level like he did with Aftermath, and so it wouldn't have been rated. So it stands to reason that without Riot, a Thanatos would not be in its current state either. So now we've looked at Riot's biggest achievements and taken them all away, we now need to look at the players involved. There were many skilled 60Hz players back in 1.9, and these players would have been left to fill the gaps of Riot's legacy in this case. Theorising became quite hard here, so I did have a chat with Riot himself, but let's have a look at these players and see who would have stepped up to the table if Riot never existed. The first and most obvious player we need to talk about is Cyclic. Now, it is generally accepted that Cyclic's amazing dynasty of 1.9 is just a sham, and that Cyclic was a hacker, but at the time, we were none the wiser and the Korean legend was doing some amazing things. Riot was Cyclic's biggest rival, and though the two were friends, there was a very hotly contested competition between the two. Whether it was their Cataclysm achievements, or their stats on the leaderboard, or their wills to verify the extreme demons of the future. Many of you will know that around the time Riot was working on Bloodbath, Cyclic released the original light blue version of Sonic Wave. Now, I've had a discussion with Riot about this. While Cyclic built old Sonic Wave to be the hardest 9 circles level ever, both Riot and I believe that the dark blue version was indeed, as many people think, released to rival Bloodbath. Cyclic was keen to keep up the pressure and compete with Riot, but someone else he was competing with was Andromeda, who was doing incredible things pre-confession at this point. Old Sonic Wave was made to rival Poltergeist as the hardest 9 circles level, and Poltergeist was made by Andromeda. Old Sonic Wave was released after the first previews of Bloodbath 2. So, what Riot and I have come to the conclusion of is that if Riot never existed, Cyclic would have still released old Sonic Wave in order to compete with Andromeda and make a new hard 9 circles level, but he would not have updated it to the dark blue version, as we feel there was simply too much Riot versus Cyclic motivation for Cyclic not to do so. So without Riot, we believe Cyclic would have released old Sonic Wave, and it would eventually have been rated, making it the hardest demon ahead of Cataclysm and Icecarb and Diablo X, which plugs the gap left by Bloodbath in this instance. With no Riot to divide the community, I believe at the end of 1.9 with Sonic Wave, Cyclic would have had complete monopoly power over the community fanbase. Without Riot, his only other competition was Andromeda, and by the turn of 2.0, Andromeda had been destroyed by his own confession. With this power, I believe Cyclic would not have quit the first time. It is believed that a lot of his quitting came from accusations over Sonic Wave's update, But in this instance, there would be no update, so I believe Cyclic would have kept on playing, seen his Sonic Wave original version rated, and would have moved into 2.0 as the people's champion of GD. Providing schoolwork didn't get in the way, of course, it's fairly likely that he would have kept on playing through till March when he quit the second time. In this instance, I think the circumstances would have been the same. He would have released the Hell Zone, which in this case would have been the second hardest demon behind Sonic Wave, realised his video was obviously hacked, and he would have confessed. However, there was no dark blue Sonic Wave to lead to this confession, so I think he might not have actually confessed to verify hacking the original Sonic Wave in his confession on his channel. Originally, Cyclic was quitting anyway at this point due to schoolwork, but then his Skype conversation with Riot is what led him to spill the beans about his hacking career. Without Riot to have the conversation with, I believe he wouldn't have deleted any of his levels like he did when he quit last time, and the Hell Zone would have simply stayed unrated, while old Sonic Wave would have continued being the #1 demon. At this point, Cyclic leaves the fray for me, so let's take a look at some of the other players that Riot left behind. The next player to consider is Powerbomb. At the turn of 2.0 or just before, Powerbomb became only the 5th person, one person after Riot, to beat Cataclysm. Moving into 2.0, this got him the attention to become the verifier for the Hell Factory by Team N2, their super buff version of their old unofficial rated level Hell Factory. Without Riot and only Cyclic ahead, it's likely Powerbomb would have become a very revered player in the community when he beat the Hell Factory, and with Cyclic verifying a bizarre Phantasm just after, the two would have worked in unison, swapping levels, and would have shared popularity in my opinion. The Hell Factory would move above Ice Carbon Diablo X and become the #2 demon behind old Sonic Wave, and it would stay there for a few months. It's a similar situation as to how the Hell Factory's reign really did pan out, except instead of being second to Bloodbath, it's second to old Sonic Wave. Another player who definitely held the candle to Riot for me in his absence is Sandstorm. Sandstorm is widely regarded as one of the best 60Hz players of all time, doing amazing things back then when they truly were amazing things. One of the things that began to slow and damage Sandstorm's career and motivation was Bloodbath. He was desperate to complete it, but at the time no one really realised how hard it was on a 60Hz monitor. Gradually, Bloodbath began to wear him down and he quit playing. Without Bloodbath, I believe he would have gone on to slay the hardest demons like he did in real life. He would have become the first to beat the Hell Factory as he did, months before anyone expected him to beat this. After this, I believe he would probably have started practicing a bizarre Phantasm when it came out and gained attention, and would have carried on being a 60Hz beast. Now we know that Cyclic hacked, we now know that Sagaesta was the second person to beat Ice Carbon Diablo X. Without Riot, but with Cyclic unexposed, Sagaesta would most likely have beaten Ice Carbon Diablo X the way he did and still become the second player to do so. After this, he would have beaten old Cataclysm like he did, and he might have gone on to practice something like ABP or even old Sonic Wave. His circumstances would have been much the same, and without 144Hz demons beginning to creep in, he probably would have had even more of a prolific run through 2.0 on 60Hz. Mafui is another player we have to consider. Mafui came incredibly close to verifying his own version of the dark blue Sonic Wave in March 2016, before his infamous crash at 98%. With no dark blue version, but a rated version of Sonic Wave which is much easier, it is likely Mafui would have become the first person to beat the #1 demon, making him the first Sonic Wave victor after Cyclic. If Cyclic, in this case, would have confessed to hacking the old Sonic Wave, and Mafui beat this version around the same point of his 98% fail in March, the community would have realised that Mafui had become the first person to beat Sonic Wave legitimately, and maybe he would have begun the 144Hz revolution, and would have been a lot more popular and would be still playing. The final player I want to talk about is Crazy, and Crazy Man becomes a very interesting prospect without Riot in the mix. When Crazy first began playing, he began climbing the ranks of demons, beating things like Madhouse, Supersonic, Ruined Journey, and a lot of other demons that were in the top 50 at the time. Crazy began to gain momentum when Riot gave him a shout out. Without Riot, Crazy would have stayed low key for a while longer. However, this wouldn't have deterred him from the order of events that ended up taking place. He would still have extended his challenge level and made it into Conical Depression. And while Conical Depression was rated and added below the Hell Factory initially, it soon found its place, and in this case one place below Sonic Wave. After this, he probably would have picked up Phobos, as Riot's absence doesn't really make a difference for Phobos if you know where Phobos came from. Once Crazy Man verified Phobos in May, this is where it becomes a little harder to theorise, as it depends on how hard you think old Sonic Wave is. I would usually say it is harder than Phobos, but now Phobos seems to be considered harder than Bloodbath by many now. So I would say Phobos could have maybe been the number one demon when verified. However, I still think Sonic Wave would have been the number one demon. As with the case with Bloodbath, people thought it was the undisputed king of demons and were unwilling to let anything go ahead of it. However, with Phobos, and probably his beating of Cataclysm that would have occurred without the 2.0 update, Crazy would have become the same hugely popular player he is today. I also think he would have continued with his levels such as Falling Up, Heartbeat and High, and eventually would have overtaken Powerbomb, the departed Cyclic and Sandstorm to become the people's best player. Don't forget, without 144Hz popularised, there would likely have been no Serve to be the best player at that time too, so Crazy would likely have been the world's best. Something I think this would have led to is Crazy being selected to verify Artificial Ascent. I think, even without Riot and Bloodbath, Artificial Ascent would have still been built and would have needed a verifier. Maybe it wouldn't have been as hard, but I still think it would have outranked Phobos and Old Sonic Wave and would have gone on to be the hardest demon, and Crazy would be the driving force behind this. So with these players and achievements in mind, and a sort of timeline of events planned out, let's take a look at the evolution of the hardest demons without Riot, remembering all these demons would be 60Hz verified by slightly. Let's start by going back to the beginning of this 1.9 theory. In the period before Sonic Wave was released, we had a top 5 of Ice Carbon Diablo 8, Cataclysm, the Ultimate Phase, Necropolis, and most likely Effort. Don't quote me on this because I've been using old copies of the demons list recently to improve the accuracy of GD theories, but I can't actually work out if Effort was the number 5 demon at this point. Fast forward to the end of 1.9, when Old Sonic Wave would be rated in this case, and Effort is knocked out of the top 5. Sonic Wave becomes the hardest demon and Ice Carbon Diablo X is dethroned shortly after being moved above Cataclysm. Moving towards January 15, we see Powerbomb verify the Hell Factory, and also Creeper Force is added to the list above the Ultimate Phase, so we now have a top 5 for Old Sonic Wave, the Hell Factory, Ice Carbon Diablo X, Cataclysm and Creeper Force. Fast forward 2 months, we have Cyclic's fall when he quit over the Hell Zone. If the Hell Zone had been rated in this instance, it would have gone below Old Sonic Wave but above the Hell Factory. Don't forget, without 144Hz, timing demons would still stand to be the ultimate test for modern players. At this point, Creeper Force had been switched with the Ultimate Phase, giving us a top 5 of Old Sonic Wave, the Hell Factory, Ice Carbon Diablo X, Cataclysm and the Ultimate Phase. Very shortly after this, A Bizarre Phantasm was rated, but at the time it was added below Cataclysm, with people not knowing how hard it was. In this instance though, we all knew it was harder than Ice Carbon Diablo X, and Ice Carbon Diablo X is above Old Cataclysm, so there's a definite paradox in theorising here, but I'm going to go ahead and say it would have been placed at place 3, giving us a top 5 of Old Sonic Wave, the Hell Factory, A Bizarre Phantasm, Ice Carbon Diablo X and Cataclysm. A Bizarre Phantasm would have likely not been moved up above the Hell Factory for a while, as it was Serve who was behind getting ABP moved up to above the Hell Factory. A month later, we begin to see the rise of Crazy Man 50 and his verification of Conical Depression. Conical Depression was added below the Hell Factory initially, so in this instance our top 5 would have likely become Old Sonic Wave, the Hell Factory, Conical Depression, A Bizarre Phantasm and Ice Carbon Diablo X. 1 month on, and Phobos comes along. Now, as I said earlier, I think Phobos may be harder than Old Sonic Wave, but I doubt it would have gone above it on this list, leaving us with the top 5 of Old Sonic Wave, Phobos, Conical Depression, which would have finally been moved up, the Hell Factory and A Bizarre Phantasm. Fast forward a few months and the next big event which would come into play in this theory would be Betrayal of Fate by Weo Weo Tio getting rated. Initially, Betrayal of Fate pushed both its own difficulty and ABP's, so when Betrayal of Fate was added, I believe ABP would have finally been moved above the Hell Factory, and Betrayal of Fate would have been added just behind A Bizarre Phantasm. Good Smile says ABP is harder than Betrayal of Fate on 60Hz. Having beaten them both, I trust his judgment, so in the period just before September, the Hell Factory is finally knocked out of the top 5, leaving us with the top 5 of Old Sonic Wave, Phobos, Conical Depression, A Bizarre Phantasm and Betrayal of Fate. Over the summer, Sacoup in Hell wouldn't have been verified due to the lack of Truster, who gained skill through Bloodbath and 144Hz, so we can exclude Sacoup in Hell from this mix. This takes us all the way through to December, when Artificial Ascent was due to be released. As I've already mentioned, I believe Crazy Man 50 would have been selected for this job, and it would have thundered to the number 1 position immediately. Just at the turn of 2017, another 60Hz player we have highlighted, Sagaesta, returns with his level Hatred, an extreme timing demon verified on 60Hz. Something that wouldn't have been impacted too much moving into 2017 is Stormfly's re-verifying of the Hell Zone and the Hell World rebirths, so these two extreme demons would have been added too. After this, pretty much everything that happened with the list is up to the present day is 144Hz oriented, so we can look at this ranking we've made. So what I did with this after was to take this list that we've made and combine it with the current demons list, excluding the 144Hz achievements and verifications Riot likely would have inspired, and I combined it with other factors such as Necropolis falling off the list early, and I created the most accurate top 25 demons if Riot never existed that is possible, and I'm really proud of this creation. I'm not comparing it with the current top 25, as there is literally no point given the huge disparity, but I hope you'll enjoy this. This is the official top 25 hardest demons for June 2017 if Riot never existed. So what else is there to consider? Well, let's quickly consider the levels Riot had planned before he quit, and discount those two. First off, we have Sonic Wave Infinity, and every version of it, be it the original, the Super Buff version, or the extension version. Without Riot, we can discount those, and a rated Sonic Wave in this case would have meant that there would be no rebirths anyway. The next level is Red World Rebirth. Riot's rebirth of Sari's hardest level would not have come to fruition without Riot to start and verify this top 5 extreme demon at the time. So Gaiaster would have most likely verified the original Red World in its place, with him being quite close to beating it before Riot started Red World Rebirth practice. After this, we have Quantum Processing, the acclaimed level that still, after nearly 2 years, 1 redesign and 3 verifiers, has not managed to be released. We also have Necropolis by Riot and Namtar, which is essentially what Souls TRK did with Acropolis, but with Necropolis instead of Acropolis. Then finally, we have Silent Akbar, a codename given to a level named Tartarus, featuring Riot, Auroras and a few others, which was rumoured to trump even Yatagarasu in difficulty. This level never got very far and was finished by Cypher. All these levels, while some may not be relevant, are gone without Riot. One last thing I want to briefly encapsulate is the popularisation of 144Hz in GD. Riot really did kick off the trend of 144Hz monitors, and that now completely dominates the game today. Bloodbath is so hard on 60Hz that the victors basically became victors because of their refresh rate and response time advantage, and then Bloodbath paved the way for levels like Yatagarasu, Bloodlust, the Flawless, Infernal Abyss and Barrier Vortex, all extreme demons that require 144Hz to be realistically possible within a given space of time. The game is dominated by 144Hz players now. More 144Hz players are in Geostorm than ever before. The demons list is written from our 144Hz perspective, something they have reaffirmed they do, and all our best players share the same monitor. I know people will be triggered upon hearing me talk about 144Hz so much, but it really is necessary, as for better or worse, 144Hz has changed the direction this game was taking. Straight flying wouldn't have been popular, and our wave skills as a community would have been worse. Sunix, Serve, Quasar, Wuxi, etc. all stand to have far less prosperous GD careers, and the rest is composed of subtle differences here and there, which amount to one big huge spectrum of changes the widespread of 144Hz brought to the game. Without Riot, it is almost impossible to predict where the community would be now, as we're just so far away from the time when 60Hz dominated. Forecasting is extremely different, and this is what I want to emphasise. So let's wrap this up, as this has been a huge GD Theories episode, hasn't it? If Riot never existed, we would lose his Cataclysm and Ice Carbon Diablo X achievements, which in turn led him to create 144Hz popularisation, along with straight flying, and all of this went hand in hand with Bloodbath. Without Bloodbath, it's likely Cyclic and Sonic Wave would have been the player and level that dominated the community in early 2.0 instead of Riot and Bloodbath. The 60Hz players that would have bridged the gaps would all largely be the same, except for Crazyman50, who I think would have gone on to be the best player in the world and would have verified Artificial Ascent, which in this case would be the hardest demon. We take all these factors and we end up with a very different demons list, one that shows barely any similarities to our current one. Overall, Riot changed the landscape of GD and took the community in a completely new direction. He defined a series of both players and levels, and without him, playing the game would be poles apart from where it is now. Thanks for watching. I've been C1997. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, as it took me a really long time to make and is probably one of the best works that I've ever done, and I'm really proud of it. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and checking out some of my other videos. The best ones are linked in the description. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you all soon.